What is good and what is up, y'all? It's your boy here, Jay, back and better than ever with the very last episode of Padres Banter as the Padres go ahead and end their 2025 campaign on the sourest of notes, losing in the wild card series to the Chicago Cubs. We'll be breaking it down and getting into it all right here on this very last episode of Padres Banter.
Don't think about it too much.
What's up, y'all, and welcome back to this very last episode of Padres Banter this season as the Padres go ahead and lose in the wild card series to the Chicago Cubs in a gut-wrenching Game 3 loss, 3-1 a couple days ago, which also so happened to be on my birthday. I want to spill the beans emotionally about how I feel right in this moment, but we got a lot to talk about in this very last episode of Padres Banter, so let's get right into it. Without further ado, the last episode of Padres Banter in the 2025 season. The Padres are eliminated from the playoffs in Chicago as the Cubs take down the Padres 3-1 in a decisive Game 3. The Padres end their 2025 campaign on a sour note after back-to-back 90-win seasons and feeling this season could be different. It was everything but different, as this year is the wild card loss. Last season was a division loss, and the season before was an NLCS loss. Seems this team is going backwards, and after the back-to-back disappointments, people feel like Mike Shildt should be questioned on the hot seat. But the game and the series come down to the last inning, as there was a chance to save the season, but it came down to a missed call at home plate by the umpire, striking out Xander Bogaerts and spoiling a chance at bases loaded, no outs in the bottom of the ninth. So, we were down 2 in that moment. It would have been big to have bases loaded, no outs. I understand that you can't, let the game be decided by the umpire in those moments. But that was an egregious call, but we didn't deserve to win. We didn't deserve to get that call, and that's exactly why that went that way. Not to mention that we weren't even, at home, so there was home field advantage for the Cubs there. But the Cubs deserved to win that series. We didn't deserve to win that series, and we'll get into it. That being said, the Padres played porous baseball and didn't deserve the ump's sympathy, as truthfully, it was garbage. Having the lineup we did, going 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position and 8 left on base in that decisive Game 3, and 3 for 26 with runners in scoring position on the series. Just atrocious. You cannot win when you can't hit with runners in scoring position. And like I said about runners in scoring position, this doesn't mean that you're driving in runs. It just means that you're hitting the baseball with runners in scoring position. We couldn't do that. 3 for 26. So like I said, just atrocious. Not to mention that the team plays small ball, but most didn't sacrifice in the situations that we felt like we should whatsoever. And throughout the entire series, it just felt like they weren't even remotely thinking about it. And it's like, what was the point of being the leading sacrifice team in the entire MLB for the entire season? And I mean, I don't know. Ultimately, the playoffs was a failure, and you can even say the season was a failure, and I should have expected it to be this way with this team, the way they have been inconsistent all season long. I should have expected it. The inconsistencies, but when you get optimistic in the playoffs because you make the dance, right? I mean, why wouldn't you be? But in the back of my mind, I already knew the problems with this Padres team, this Padres roster, the entire year. We were leaning on our pitching. We weren't really getting the hits when we needed to. I'm not going to lie. We were lucking out some of these wins. But that's baseball. And I'm not saying that we didn't deserve to be here. But when we put a performance out like that, it doesn't matter who you play or what the opponent is or what the stakes are. 3 for 26, 0 for 8 in a Game 3 that we need our guys to go ahead and score runs. I mean, you can't win the ball game without scoring runs. It's just a known fact. You can't. So, and it was 3 runs. It wasn't like they had 5, 6, 7, 8 runs. It was 3 runs that we couldn't get 2 to even make it interesting. But let's get into the game breakdowns before I get ahead of myself and how the Padres ended their 2025 campaign, like I said, before we ran some more. In Game 1, the Padres struggled to get anything going on racking up 4 hits and losing 3-1 in the opener. Pivetta pitched his heart out, going 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 9 Ks on 85 pitches, just absolutely dealing and putting the Padres in prime position to go ahead and win the ball game. But the bats weren't there. Bullpen followed and did what they do best, except Estrada giving up 1 run, but he still had a great outing. Morajón, Miller, Estrada, and Peralta all limited the damage, but the bats were just dead as Manny, Arraez, and Tatis were 0 for 11 combined. Our 1 through 3 hitters were 0 for 11 combined in Game 1. Garbage. Padres did go 2 for 7 with runners in scoring position. Still not good. As well, that didn't help, but couldn't get the job done. Just not getting the job done, and the guys who you need to step up are not there whatsoever. Boyd for the Cubs pitched well, going 4 and 1/3 innings pitched, an earned run, a walk, and 2 Ks, and limited the damage as there was traffic on the bases, stranded several on the pond. In the end, the Padres couldn't muster more than 1 run and would go on to lose Game 1 and face elimination in Game 2. And in the wild card era, no team had lost a Game 2 after hosting a Game 1. In Game 2, the Padres would make wild card history and win Game 2 after losing Game 1 in Wrigley. No team had done that in MLB history and would do so with the help of a two-run home run by Manny Machado in the 5th inning to propel the Padres to a 3-0 victory. The other run the Padres would get during the first with the sac fly by Jackson Merrill. Cease dealed and showed his worth, but was cut short after giving up a double in the 4th, but went 3 2/3 innings pitched, 3 hits, no earned runs, a walk, and 5 Ks on 69 pitches, like I said, showing his worth and showed his elite stuff of topping out at 100 miles an hour. The bullpen for the Padres would continue to show their eliteness and blowing people's minds as Morajón would come in and go and do great over 2 1/3 innings pitched, but Mason Miller would steal the show, going 1 2/3 and averaging a fastball of 101 miles an hour, topping out at 104.5 miles an hour, the fastest pitch in his career and the fastest pitch in postseason history since velocity was tracked in 2008. Just absolutely unfair and unreal stuff from Mason Miller, the Reaper, and showing why Preller traded Leo DeVries, his number 1 prospect, for Mason Miller. So great stuff. We went ahead and got that dub with our backs against the wall, propelled us not only because of the Manny Machado home run, but also because of our bullpen and really sealing the deal, closing the door on this great Cubs offense, right? A lot of people thinking our bullpen is just good and that's just the way that it is. No, this Cubs offense is really good. Like I told you in my last podcast of Padres Banter, they're top 5 in runs scored, they're top 5 in home runs, they're top 3 in stolen bases. They score runs. That's what they do. And so top 5 in OPS, and we're bottom 5 in OPS. So regardless of them striking out as much as they do, when they do swing and they do make contact, it's either leaving the yard or it's doing, it's going for extra bases. So this Cubs lineup was just very potent, and for us to do what we did in Game 2 with our backs against the wall, especially knowing that they could have swept us right there and then, and also not to mention that this was the first time in MLB history that a team had came back and won a Game 2 after losing a Game 1 in on the road in a wild card series. So that was big time. Obviously, like I said, nobody had ever done that in the short wild card history, but it's still big time. And to do that in a hostile environment, Wrigley hasn't hosted a playoff game since 2017, the year after they won the World Series. So all things considered, great win to go ahead and force a Game 3. And Mason Miller did just that, and Suarez did just that, shutting the door on the Cubs, who struck out 5 of the batters, as Miller would set down the first 5 batters in first 5 batters of the game and first 7 of his postseason career. So he was about to go 6 straight batters. Excuse me. He was about to go 6 straight batters strikeout, but hit that last batter, and that's all right. But all that being said, like I said, first 5 batters that he faced struck them all out, and then first 7 of his career struck them all out, leading the Padres to a 3-0 dub. But the win would hide the fact that the Padres would go 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position and leave 7 on base. Another terrible showing with runners on base and opportunities to put the game out of reach. So realistically, yes, we won 3-0, but we should have won by 5 or 6 more runs. Also, a great double play to end the game by X and Jacob. But like I said, all around great game from the bullpen. Way to seal the deal at the end between Xander and Jacob, who Xander played a great shortstop this entire series as well, not to mention him. But Jacob just over the entire series. That's just unacceptable. But back to the point, game 2 was a success, obviously forcing that game 3. Cease showed his worth and showed why maybe you should reconsider bringing him back on this roster, even though I personally would not. I think that our time is up with Dylan Cease, and I think that it's time to move on. But all that being said, getting that dub, forcing the game 3, and with our backs against the wall. But, like I said, did hide the fact that we went 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. So, just unacceptable. Just unacceptable. And then in game 3, the decisive game 3, not a rubber match, but a decisive game 3, and who's going to win the series and move on to play the Milwaukee Brewers in the division series, which starts today, guys, and in game 3, and in the decisive game 3, that would move the winner to Milwaukee to face off against the Brewers. The Cubs would prevail, going to win 3-1 and move on to play the Brewers today. The Cubs would rack up 13 hits, but only score 3 runs. Credit to the Padres bullpen as they held it down for the offense to try and make a comeback, but couldn't do anything, going 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position and 8 left on base. Just terrible. Merrill would have a double and a home run, and really the only person with life on this entire roster, it felt like, at times. Not to mention an X stolen base, and Fermin throwing out runners as well. Fermin also had 2 hits and showed his fight and showed his worth, why we got him at the trade deadline. So, I give my heart out to Freddie Fermin for showing, his fight. And in the end, it wasn't enough as the game came down to the last inning rally that was spoiled by the strike 3 call that it wasn't deserved. It wasn't deserved. And, that's kind of how game 3 went. We really didn't do anything much outside of that. We got out hit by a pretty wide margin. Like I said, they had 13 hits and we only had, I think, 7 hits in that game. 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, 8 left on base. Freddie Fermin did, show his fight not only, with his bat, but also throwing out base runners. Can't say enough about X also having, a great game as well. Just showing his fight, even though coming back from that, foot injury late on in the season. So I applaud him for that. But the Cubs prevail and they move on to play the Milwaukee Brewers, and it's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. There's nothing else you can really say about it. At this point, I feel numb to these situations. It's on repeat. But at the end of the day, that's how game 3 went. But here we are again. Am I surprised? No. This team has been inconsistent all season and just hasn't found their footing whatsoever. They'll be hot, then they'll be cold. The pitching has held this team down all season long, which I said earlier, having one of the worst OPSs in the league throughout 2025 season, and also didn't hit the long ball great all year long. Just runs were not very easy to come by this year, and they were at a premium. So we just, every time we got runs, I felt like, we it was hard to hold on to them at times because of the fact that, we had great pitching. There's teams that would come back, and then we would just have no fight in the end. It was just like whatever we put out in the beginning of the game was what we're going to go with. Didn't have a lot of comeback wins. There were a lot of walk-offs this year, so I guess there were, a good amount of comeback wins, but not a lot of fight late innings is what I'm trying to say. But especially later on in the season, it felt like that, whatever we did early on in the game was just how it was going to go, and that's exactly what happened with this entire game. Game 1 didn't really come out. We came out flat, and we lose that game. Game 2, we come out electric, obviously backs against the wall, hair on fire, we win. And then game 3, it felt like, it's game 3, it's just going to happen. And it's like, It's not. You gotta go out and do it. You just gotta go out and do it. But we didn't do it, and I think the MVP for this series has to be Dansby Swanson, who he beat us single-handedly with his glove. And for the Padres, it has to be the bullpen and Merrill and Freddie Fermin for me. Um, but yeah, back to Dansby Swanson, just single-handedly beating us with his glove and so many runs saved, not just hits, runs. Ryan O'Hearn a couple times, Luis Ariz a couple times, and just showing why he's a Gold Glover, showing why he's a perennial All Star. Still got it. A lot of people probably did, discredit him for being one of the better shortstops in the league, but he showed it. He showed it in this series for sure, and maybe didn't have the greatest at bats, but like I said, that glove single handedly beat us. There were runs that could have been on the board that would have definitely changed the perspective of how a lot of these games could have gone. I'm not gonna say that we would have won games because of those runs scored, but yeah, those do account to wins, and they definitely would have affected the mindset of the Cubs and hope and maybe made it a little bit more interesting. But obviously, he saved the day, put a Superman cape on, and did just that. But for us specifically, I think the bullpen was that biggest MVP for us. Obviously, just doing what they do best. I don't really have to speak much more on how great they were and how they kept us in this series, how they kept us in this game, how they kept us in this season. They really did what everybody anticipated them to do, and being quote unquote the best bullpen in baseball. Even if it wasn't against one of the better teams in baseball, I do consider the Cubs to be one of the better teams in baseball because of how they're built. But a lot of people don't. But doing it against this lineup and doing it against everybody else the entire year, the whole year, knowing that our starters haven't really been getting any length besides Nick Pivetta. Um, it was just great to see for the bullpen. So my MVP award goes out to the bullpen mostly, and then obviously Jackson Merrill and Freddie Fermin, who both were the only two guys I felt like on this roster that really showed any fight for this entire series, or any emotion. I feel like that's the biggest thing with me right now is just the body language and how things are happening in the clubhouse and on the field. Yeah, we can, always, not want to give emotion or show emotion or show that we care, because you don't want to care too much. As baseball players, we're told move on to the next, move on to the next, move on to the next, but at a certain point in time it shows almost as if you really do not care at all. The level of emotion, the body language on the field, in the dugout, in the clubhouse, I imagine. um, I mean, yeah, in the clubhouse, because I saw Manny Machado's body language after, a loss, which is completely understandable, but, that was uncalled for in the sense of the reporter. That's just me. Yeah, the question was out of line in the sense that it doesn't make sense why you're asking that at that point in time, but the response was unwarranted. Manny Machado could have handled that a lot better than he did and be more mature about it and be a leader in that aspect, and just brush it off and say, what, I don't know right now. We just lost. So I'll think about it, in a couple days or something, instead of, bashing the reporter. But that's neither here nor there. My point of all of this is just the body language and the aura and just the vibe within this clubhouse and with this in this organization right now is starting to rear its ugly head in the sense that when we did bring Manny Machado over, he did change the culture of this Padres organization. He did, really change how people view the Padres, and I completely in San Diego, gives their heart out to Manny and for that and being able to bring this franchise in resurgence. And we obviously love Manny for doing that and being able to, like I said, bring this Padres franchise back to relevancy. But at the end of the day, what came with Manny obviously was this, bad guy, mentality, bad boy mentality. And he's dirty, he's this, he's that. And I feel like as fans, there's times where, Manny probably is a little bit more dirty than expected, or probably does things out of character, but we always back Manny up. We always feel like because of what he's done for San Diego, and because of the fact that he, owns a franchise, another franchise here in the soccer SDFC here, um, that we just gloss over everything that he does. Really, he is a perennial All-Star. He is a perennial, Gold Glove winner. We know what he's gonna bring on the field, but I feel like sometimes at certain points in time when we need him the most, when we need him to produce, or we need him to be a leader, it just isn't there, and it's rather concerning because it's like you're getting older, you're not getting any younger, and we understand what you've done for San Diego, but it's time to, all of those, things that you said or start, we need to put those into fruition, right? We did put into fruition that everybody's going to look at the Padres differently, but, and this is the best era of Padres baseball, and I don't want to sound like, I'm just completely bashing the Padres and they're bad and they're this and they're that. No, because I've seen the worst of the worst when it comes to the Padres and what this organization has been. But after these losses, we are starting to understand a little bit more about what it is like to try and win a championship. And I just know that this isn't it. And whatever is going on in the clubhouse, whatever virus, whatever, vibe is going on in the clubhouse, it's got to switch. And whatever vibe is going on in Manny's head, it's got to change. I feel like, yes, be who you are and be the perennial all-star, but we need to see that leadership. We need to see that fire. We need to start seeing a want. And I think that's the biggest thing is like even with Tatis when he strikes out, walking off all mopey. And I've lamented that even with Dylan Cease getting off the mound, walking off all mopey. It's like the attitude, it feeds into your character. It feeds into your identity. And yes, as baseball players, like I lamented earlier, you're told not to necessarily show too much emotion because you don't want to, be flamboyant, I guess, or be strung out is what players would look at you strung out if you're slamming helmets, doing this, doing that. So yeah, you try to hold yourself back because you are pissed off in moments when you strike out in big time moments, all this other stuff. But also that competitive spirit should override in those moments, those big time moments when you're striking out. But then also too, get digging a little bit deeper into the player aspect. When you have been playing baseball for as long as you have, to just not have the approach that you should as a professional that's played the game for 20 plus 25 plus years, however Manny has played it. It just doesn't make sense sometimes. The approach is unreal. And even for Tatis, you go up there and you swing at 3 straight pitches on the simplest pitch sequence that you can imagine that I faced in high school, right? Fastball, slider, fastball. Slider, fastball, slider. It just, and not to mention that they have all these things in the dugout, capabilities to look at what the pitcher is doing and the sequencing he has and how recently this sequencing has been happening and what he's just throwing first pitch, what he's throwing on the second pitch, what he's throwing to lefties on first pitch. You can even show him where on the zone or where in the strike zone he's throwing these baseballs. You have everything at your disposal, yet go up there and swing at 3 straight pitches, and we're supposed to act like that's just normal. You're a superstar, $300 million superstar. And you go in between the two, you go 2 for 22, I believe it was, 2 for 23 in the series, in a 3-game series. I can go on and on, but the culture, the attitude, the vibe, what I see, and I don't see a lot, right? I'm not a reporter. I'm not somebody that's in the clubhouse or anything, but it's so evident in what I watch and all of the videos that I see from the reporters, the news stations, the Twitter accounts. You go on. It just isn't it. It just isn't it. And I don't know, if I want to go to the extent of saying we should move on from Manny, because I do, want to ride for my guy, and I do want to ride for Toddy, and I don't want to move on from Toddy. But the culture has to change. The mentality has to change. The nonchalant attitude has to change. That's not it. It's not it, right? Jackson Merrill is the one that's out there, saying let's fucking go on second base, getting doubles, getting home runs. and actually looks like he's looking at the iPads in between at bats and looking for what the hell is coming next from the next pitcher. It just looks like these dudes are going up there, not looking at anything that they should be, and just flailing at stuff and expecting to get a fastball. Do you really think, Fernando Tatis, that anybody on planet Earth would throw you a fastball in the playoffs after what you just did last season? Think twice, bro. Think twice. Is it so hard to understand that you are a top-tier talent and you hit balls out of the ballpark, you change the game, so maybe people are going to try a little bit harder against you? Now, Manny Machado, I mean, besides your defense, which is consistent and there all the time for some reason, but then when we need you to even put balls in play, and that's even the bigger part about it, right? I'm not even talking about getting hits, just putting the ball in play. When we need people to put the ball in play or just move runners over, hit the ball to the right side, the simple stuff, the fundamentals that you learned throughout your baseball career. Hitting the ball to the outfield, getting a sac fly, moving the runner. I mean, just simple stuff they cannot accomplish. And it's brushed over, it's glossed over, whatever you want to call it, by Mike Shildt. He doesn't give a crap because we got Manny Machado and they're Fernando Tatis and they're big-time players. And he's a player's coach, and I get that. He's a player's manager, and he's going to ride for his guys. He's going to constantly, build them up and say that they are this, they've done this, they've done that. But what does Janet Jackson say? What have you done for me lately? What have you done? I understand the awards and the accolades. That's freaking great. Those are not team awards. They're not team accomplishments. The only thing good this season this team did as a team collectively was win 90 wins and get to the playoffs. The only thing. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me there's something else that they did this season that besides, probably, another Padres team in franchise history hasn't done, but that's within the organization. I'm talking about in the broad aspect of things. What have they done? 90-win season and got to the playoffs, and that's it. Wild card. Missed the division. Had an opportunity to win the division. Mind you, I don't know if this would have reset the lineup. I don't know. The fans don't deserve this. And not to mention the fans having over 3 million people attend this season just to get handed a loss in the wild card series. Look, I get it. Baseball happens and sports happens. You can't win every year. But we never win. So, I mean, when you get mad about a wild card outing and people are like, well, I don't care if we make the playoffs anymore, right? That's the point. Is if I want to go to the playoffs, I want to make a run. I want to make a run. I'm not here to watch them in the wild card series. I'm just not. But all dudes who showed up and looked like they wanted to play, those are the dudes that did. Jackson Merrill, Freddie Fermin, and the bullpen. But the Padres find themselves once again on the outside looking in to the playoffs. I think we need to start to question, like I said, the stars that I had been lamenting to, but also Jake Cronenworth going 0 in the entire series. 0. And that's another thing, right? What is going on with the lineup, Mike Shildt? Why are we having 3 straight lefties? I think that's just second grade level baseball knowledge to know to not put 3 straight lefties, especially when you're up there facing a lefty. There's things we're starting to question. Right here it says, do we need to start questioning Manny Machado Tatis? What's the deal? Is the Machado experience terrible and to build around someone like Merrill? Absolutely. But back to Mike Shildt, like I said, why? It makes me feel like he's doing stuff out of spite. Like he's just doing this, putting the lineup out because he hears all the noise about what people want him to do, and he's going to do the complete opposite. And it's wild because people will literally do that out of spite and risk their job to stand their ground and not try and do the necessary things or listen to suggestions to see if it works better. Not only did he start these guys in game 1, 3 straight lefties, O'Hearn, Sheets, and Cronenworth in a row. He started them every single game of this series. So when the lineup, that part of the lineup came up every single time, what do you think the Cubs did? They put a lefty in. And I was like, oh, 3 straight lefties, lefty. It is so easy to game plan against. And sure enough, it happened so perfectly that every time that part of the lineup came up, it was them 3 as the next up in order. So it just, and so what did he do in the later innings? Sub out Gavin Sheets and put in Jose Iglesias. I love Jose. He's done great for us this season in filling in and doing what he needs to do. Obviously, because you need a full team to play 162 games. So he did play quite a few games. Did great. Played all over the field. Bat was But we knew what we were going to get from the glove side. I mean, geez. I mean, awesome plays from Jose. But why are we pitch hitting him in that situation? Gavin Sheets is having a career year. 71 RBIs, 27, or what is it? Was it 20 home runs, something like that? Not 27, but like 17, 20 home runs with a 250. I mean, I feel like I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, what do we know what we're talking about? It just doesn't make sense. And you guys saw what I wanted for the order specifically in my last podcast. I went ahead and put down the order how I wanted it, and just wasn't that order, and it's fine, because we put that order out that we did, and then we lost. But yeah, guys, I mean, it's just frustrating from all things considered. Like I said, from the lineup to Shildt to Manny, to not hitting with runners in scoring position. It is just frustrating. But where I'm at, I love Manny. He changed the complexion on the Padres and how they are viewed, but at times in his leadership fails. It seems he doesn't show enough and doesn't sometimes give everything, and then gets mad when asked about, the assessment of the season, not to mention that he's getting older and how many more years of this failure will happen. Also, Shildt needs to be questioned, like I said, about that lineup. Just doesn't make any sense having 3 straight lefties in a row just to sub one out for Jose Iglesias and then put Bryce Johnson, who's another lefty. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? So what you do is you have 3 straight lefties, and then you let O'Hearn hit because he's going to get lefties. Okay. Then Gavin Sheets comes up. This is the 6th inning of 3 of the games, I believe. I think he pinch hit 3 times. All 3 games. Gavin Sheets gets up. Later innings. Sub in Jose Iglesias. And then right after, you got Jake Cronenworth, who didn't do jack shit. Right? But then what happens is, obviously, you can't put Jose Iglesias in left field. So you go ahead and you put Bryce Johnson. Right? Which, I love Bryce. Great defensive substitution. Obviously, he's a switch hitter. But, dude, these are way too big of games for Bryce Johnson, dude. I mean, like I said, he's a player's coach. He rides for his guys, and it's a little too much. It's a little too much sometimes. But not to mention that I don't know what will happen with Arise, Cease, Suarez, and O'Hearn next year. I don't know. So there's just it's going to be a different team next year. It's going to be very interesting to see who's going to come back. Or like I said, Arise, most likely than not going to be gone. And if it is Luis, I appreciate everything that he's done in a Padres uniform, and getting the batting title and doing what he was doing, and that was great. And since the time he came over, he's just really had a flair with him. And I understand maybe the production wasn't there in this past year, but he really held it down. There was a couple times where obviously we're like, damn it, on the defensive side of the ball, or, even the offensive side, because, he doesn't bring a lot of power. But he changes the dynamic of, how this lineup is molded. And that's what I respect about him most. And what I also respect about him the most is just his fire and his flair and his love, right, for the game. You could see it. I don't know if he had been that fiery with the Marlins before, or even the Twins for that matter, but if this is the last time Luis O'Rise is in a Padres uniform, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate everything that he did in bringing the flair and to this lineup, and you know, good luck in the future. That's all I can say, and I'm gonna miss him big time, big time. But moving on to Dylan Cease, I also don't think that he's going to return next season. And this is the last time seeing Dylan Cease in a Padres uniform. Um, I thank Dylan Cease for everything that he did in the Padres uniform. Throwing a no hitter was the biggest highlight I think he had in a Padres uniform. Um, but yeah, there were times where obviously fans were going at him. He did struggle in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, he's still human. He's still a player, and I still respect what he did for this organization, and obviously coming to a franchise that was competing, and coming from the White Sox, I know that was a little bit different mentality. But yeah, no, I applaud Dylan Cease. And guys, listen, I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of bad things that these guys have done. Obviously, I can bash these guys and be like, I'm not gonna miss this guy. I'm not gonna miss this guy. But these guys are all humans. They're all baseball players, and I understand that. As much as it may have not turned out the best for them in a Padres uniform, they still put their best foot forward, and there were definitely highlights from both of these guys, Arise, Cease, and then moving on to Suarez. I don't think that we're going to probably bring him back next year as well. He's probably going to have a lot to ask for with his contract, and not to mention that we just got Mason Miller, so there isn't really a need. Yes, obviously there is a need because it's a nasty bullpen when he is in it, but Suarez, the past 4 or 5 years being in a Padres uniform, just absolutely fantastic being our closer. You can't say enough about, how he molded himself into who he is. At first when he came over, nobody really knew who Suarez was, but now everybody knows who Suarez is. And, man, can't say enough about, how much he's molded into the closer and the pitcher that he has. And, nothing but the best of luck if this is the last time seeing him in a Padres uniform. And I thank him for all the moments of closing and all the, the walkout, from, his trot out to the mound in the ninth inning to his whole show he does. So, man, can't say enough about Bobby fastballs. And, yeah, there were times where he blew saves, but, 40 saves this season, that's still ridiculous, guys. That's still ridiculous. I just want to go over the top tier guys and see, give them my love. Obviously, nothing is set in stone yet, but overall, they had a great 10 years in Padres uniforms. But let's go over, the 2025 season to wrap up this last episode of Padres Banter. And thoughts overall, like I said, I'm not too high on this season. It is what it is, and yeah, we did have a 90-win season, but it was just up and down. And to be honest, I'll look back on the 2025 season and be like, I feel like 2024 was better, and even 2023 was better. So, it could have been better. But yeah, is what I have to say about this season. Truthfully, there's ups and downs. We never found our footing. Injuries throughout the entire year, but expected, obviously, in a 162-game season. And the fans showing out. Over 3 million showed out this year. I think that's also something that I'll remember with this season, as we showed out just to lose in a wild card series. But in the end, it could be worse. Like I said, Padres could be the 2000 Padres or the 2010 Padres and miss the postseason year after year. I think as Padres fans, we deserve to be upset, but draw perspective and what it used to be, because it used to be terrible, guys. We remember those dark days. If you didn't just join us in 2020, it used to be dark. Nobody wanted to come to San Diego. This is the best era of Padres baseball as consistency goes, and we could have nothing to look forward to or talk to, but we do. And so that's the perspective that we have to have. Yes, it is upsetting. Yes, we do want more, but it's all right, because at the end of the day, it could be worse, is what I'm saying, and it could be way worse year after year. So lots can change and lots to look forward to. And even though the season was a failure, I'm excited for the future to see what happened, because like I said, we have so much to look forward to. In years past, we didn't have anything to look forward to. But that's a wrap on this season, guys. Capper, and nothing more or much more to say than that. I've said my piece, and it hurts, guys. It hurts. Here we are again. But until we do it, nobody will stop talking about the fact that we haven't done it. So that's my point to that is all these social media comments, all these things, for us Padres fans, just keep your head high, understanding. Until we do it, it's going to be the same way. And everybody's going to talk about it the same way. Failure this, failure that. Manny Machado's not this. Manny Machado's not that. Tatis is not this. Tatis is not that. We will get there at some point in time, and the baseball gods will shine down on San Diego. I don't know when that day will be. I hope it comes soon. But at the end of the day, there's so much to look forward to, and we can't keep our head down for too long because the season will be coming right back around to us in March of 2026. But in the end, that is a wrap of the final episode of Padres Banter of the 2025 season. I'll see you guys in a couple months once we start getting into winter meetings and free agency tracker. So love you guys. Appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this episode of this edition of Jay's Point After. It's Padres Banter. And even though we lost, it's still go Padres. It's still go Padres. So, like I said, man, just keep your head high, y'all, and understand that the baseball gods will shine on San Diego one day. But the 2025 season of Padres Banter, we out.
Don't think about it too much, too much, too much, too much. This is more than just a new lust for you. Oh, don't think about